Dr. John Delony, welcome to the show.
My man, Chris.
How are you?
Thanks for the, dude, I'm fantastic. I love being back in Texas, where I was born and raised, man. It's good. Are you adjusting?
I am slowly becoming native. Someone told me that I was allowed to use the word y'all because I've been here for 3 years now.
That's a huge welcome, Matt.
I get the sense.
That's big, man.
I get the sense that it is me being conned into saying the equivalent of the N-word for Texan people. And the Texas Tribune is going to catch me hard R-ing my way through y'all a couple of times. So I'm not falling for the psyop. I can't quite get to that. I'm up to sidewalk and trash can, but y'all not yet.
Instead, what's the alternative to trash can?
Rubbish.
Oh,
Rubbish bin.
yeah. You got to be careful with rubbish bin here.
Rubbish bin. Yeah, you don't know what that means. Crack that open. Come on, get it in you.
All right.
You've been waiting for this.
I've been excited for this moment.
Yeah. Well, you'll have an unlimited amount going to the office soon.
Well, I appreciate that.
Orange sunrise for you.
Excellent. This is my first one. This is my live review.
Cherry popper.
That's outstanding.
Fuck.
Well done, man.
Thank you.
Well done.
Good. Yeah, it's you're now 5 IQ points smarter. 10. Let's see. Each sip is
I
like
accept, man. It'll light me up like a Christmas tree.
half a standard deviation. All right. I have no idea how I didn't stumble across you and the work that you do, because it aligns so much with lots of the things that I'm very interested in, and I really appreciate the way that you are firm but gentle and reassuring. I think when you speak to people, a lot of the conversations around relationships and dating and mental health tend to me to either be so soft as to not have an impact, or so brusque and harsh as to cause people to get defensive, and for it to feel a little bit more about the host or the commentator, the advice giver, than it is about the person who has the problem. So yeah, I think like really, really great.
I appreciate that.
To balance that.
It's I wanted so badly to be the Huerman of mental health and of relationships, and early on it was very clear that's not why people want to talk to you. They've never seen a big, tall, loud, tattooed up Texan talk to that mother who just blew her life up, like, compassionately. And I think in our strange little weird ecosystem that we live in, there's a lot of people that know about stuff, and they've just never sat with hurting people, right? There's a lot of theories and a lot of ideas, but man, you can hear somebody who's actually sat with somebody who just lost a child. And that's it. There's a different level of compassion, right?
What have you learned about how to hold space for somebody that's going through a difficult time, from the my first ever relationship just broke up with me all the way through to the I just lost a child?
Dude, let me tell you this. So my wife, she was a research professor. She quit her job she's like, man, this sounds strange, especially for her. I think I want to stay at home and have kids. And that was just like, who are you? What you've done with my wife? It was amazing. We talked through it. It was awesome. And gets pregnant, miscarriage number 1. Gets pregnant, miscarriage number 2. Then miscarriage number 3.
No way.
But it was an ectopic pregnancy. And it ruptured, right? And so she's a really strong, tough West Texas woman. And she sits in that living room and says, I'm not doing this. It's not happening again. Which, she almost died in our living room. Well, here's the thing. After miscarriage 1, and especially number 2, lucky for her, she was married to a guy working on his second PhD. And I was also a crisis, the word that gives me hemorrhoids, expert. And so I would show up in the community to sit with people who had loss. And dude, I rubbed her nose in my charts, in my graphs, in my answers. And then this happened. So a close friend of mine who's suffered unimaginable loss. I show up with my son, who was 4 at the time. We go to the ER. They're wheeling her back. And when you show up at crisis scenes, it's hard to describe. There can be blood on the wall and bodies, but you make eye contact with other responders and you know the scene's safe. You know it seems placid. And then there's something we call crazy eyes. You look across and it's like, oh, this scene's still live. Like there might be a shooter still here, right? And you can see it. And I walked in and made eye contact with the head of the OBGYN out at Texas Tech Medical Center. And I remember holding my son's hand saying, oh, this is it. This is the last time I see her. And they wheel her off. I text somebody to come pick my son up. I go to this little room that's about this big. And a buddy of mine, a West Texas rancher who's a children's author, walks in, hat, everything. He's taller than me. He nods. I say nothing. He says nothing. He sits by me. 30 minutes. 1 hour, 1.5 hours, 2 hours. Then the physician busts in the door holding a iPad thing, and she says, "We lost the baby, but your wife's okay." And I exhaled, and this rancher, who hadn't spoken other than, "Hey," he reaches over and grabs my shoe, and I look over at him, and he starts crying tears. I don't even have yet. But the important thing is he said no words, and it didn't matter. And in a culture that we won't shut up, Chris, when your friend has a breakup, golly, dude, the last thing they need is all of your theories and answers. And, well, oh my gosh, let's Google it. That's catastrophic. They just need you to sit there and bring tacos, bring a bottle of wine, or bring whatever you got in the fridge. You know what I mean? And we don't have a culture of presence. We have a culture of answers, of talking. And so what I've learned over the years, what do you say to a mother whose kid is dead in that room right there? Nothing. But she'll remember that hug, right? She'll remember that exhale, and that will get her to the next gulp of air, right? There's just no words, man. And so the more I've been sitting with hurting people, I'm finding myself talking less and less and less and less.
It's a beautiful story. And the first time that I ever really started thinking about this was Sean Strickland on Theo Von's podcast a year ago, where Sean has that really bad experience sort of reliving his childhood. And Charlie Hupert from Charisma on Command did this unbelievable breakdown. He's redone it again. He's run it back on his other channel. And it's so beautiful. He just explains, Sean is sort of gripping this bottle. I think he's gripping the bottle with his left hand. He's sort of drinking from it like this. And you can see he's grasping with this left hand. He's actually trying to grip onto something. He's trying to get a hold of security and firmness. And Charlie's breaking down his body language. You can see what Theo does that drops him in and then pulls him out. And then he goes back in again. Because Theo he doesn't make it about him. He does like a triple A. I don't want to give any shade on Theo. He literally inspired me to become a better space holder, a better communicator in difficult times. But there's some things that you do that just rip someone out just a little bit, and then they close off, and well, like, what does it matter? I'm a big guy. I'm a grown adult. And then he sort of starts to get back into it. And then, the most beautiful thing that Theo says in that entire exchange is, he's like, "We don't need to talk, man. We can just sit here for a while if you want."
That's it. And that's somebody who only knows that because they've been hurt too. Right? Like, we don't have to say anything. I'll just sit here with you.
Powerful, dude.
What a gift.
What else? So, shut up.
Yeah.
One of the first things that you should do when trying to help somebody that's going through stuff. What else?
Yeah, I think that sounds easy in theory, but I think the what else happens before. I have to do my own work that I believe I'm worthy of the space I'm going to hold with you, right? So I got to show up okay. Most of the people who get diagnosed with cancer, who lose a loved one, who lose a pregnancy, etc., they'll tell you they found themselves responsible for making sure everybody else was okay. And don't text somebody, "How's it going?" Like, you really want to know how's it going, right? And I'm going to text that back to you. Bring food, show up, and I think it's action. It's action. I'm going to go mow your lawn, and I trust you to tell me to stop. I'm going to keep sending tacos, and you may have 5,000 tacos, and they may go straight to the trash can. But you're going to know when the fog lifts, you were loved, you were cared. Yeah, you were cared for.
Yeah, I had an incident that opened up something similar. It was my birthday a couple of weeks ago, and I finished recording upstairs, finished this episode, and came down, and Jonathan, who's outside, his dog was walking around. I was like, "What the fuck's Jonathan's dog doing here?" He must be here to show us the new merch samples, because we're starting to get merch done. And as I walked in, it turned out that there was a surprise birthday celebration for me, and there was only 5 people there. All of them worked for me in one form or another, or work with me. And it was the middle of the day on a Friday. So who's free at 2 p.m. on a Friday to come and do stuff? And it's tiny. And my best friend was getting married the next day, and I was his best man here in Texas. So my head's in a different place. I'm thinking about the speech. I've just finished this episode. I got to go and work on the speech. I got to remember the thing, do the joke about the white people. And I come down, and there's 5 people, and they put a banner up, and it said "Happy Birthday," and there was a cake, and one of the guys was filming it. Our videographer Max was filming it, and I was like, "Oh, this is really, really beautiful." And then we sat down, we had some cakes. It was all laid out really nicely. Then they sang "Happy Birthday" to me, and there was this bit there was this sense as I went down, as you said there, about almost having this odd guilt debt that you want to repay to people because, well, if they're doing this just because they love me, then I need to be able to sort of feel that in a way, as opposed to there being some sort of value exchange. You know, all of these people in one form or another work with me, work for me, and that's fine. You know, we're working together, we're building this project, we're doing the whatever thing. And watching 5 people sing Happy Birthday to me at 2:30 p.m. on a Friday. I did a live show in London last year to 3,500 people. The 5 people was way more uncomfortable. Yeah, because I was seen by them.
But think of the world we've set up. Dr. Joyner, he's out of Florida State. He writes really eloquently on suicide, right? And one of the 3 legs of the stool is of when you're doing a suicide assessment is perceived burdensomeness. There's that idea.
People would be better if I
wasn't here. But look at the world we've built. Like, I'm not going to ask you to take me to the airport. I'll just Uber. I'm not going to ask you, can I borrow some eggs and sugar? I'm just going to like Instacart or whatever. And I think the meta narrative is my presence is a burden too. And if you guys, it's the air we breathe. That I'm going to bother people. And now every relationship we have is transactional. And your experience is, man, it's very common that you wake up and the only people in your life are on your payroll or on somebody's payroll, and like y'all are on the same payroll. And man, that your body would be failing you if it let you sleep all night because it knows you're lonely, right?
In some ways, I've heard you, do you have people in your life that you can talk to that are just your friends that you don't work with? That seems to be a common thread in some of the conversations you speak to. You have some housewife. I've heard you speak to a bunch of these recently. A housewife who's there was one that had insomnia. She kept waking up throughout the night.
The same thing.
You said how many friends have you got, and you dug real deep, and it turned out she did have. It seemed like she had quite a good social network. But yes, it does seem we spend so much time at work, and we're so obsessed with productivity and moving forward in some way that we don't have friends for the sake of being friends with them. We have friends who are compatriots and soldiers in whatever battle it is that we're fighting, against getting our Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu purple belt, against becoming better at pickleball, against learning to salsa dance, against learning to do improv, against the job interview, the promotion, whatever it is. And it's an odd blend.
It makes people into a 401k.
Is it your opinion that there is something lesser about friendship with people that you work with too?
No, the fear I have is when you don't have jujitsu and when you don't have, I remember, dude, training at MMA gym, dude, that's the most eclectic, wacky group of people that had a shared mission that all got together.
You've selected for a group that want to be punched in the face.
Yeah, but there's also like a male nurse, and this guy doesn't have a job at all, and this guy's a dean of students. I mean, it was
in his car.
Random group of people. No, the problem with only having friends at work is if something ever doesn't work out there, you find yourself on an island in a moment when you need people. And so if you get let go, if you have a problem at work, then you also have a problem everywhere else in your life.
Well, it's the same issue with men who get divorced, right? The single most predictive lifestyle change for suicide is men who get divorced. The reason being, it seems, women are much better at holding on to their own social networks when they get into a marriage, whereas men supplant their own social networks and they use the wives.
That's right.
So, you know, the wife has loads of female friends and the female friends have husbands, and you, as the husband, become friends with the husbands of her friends.
That's it, man. And you sit there like, yeah, it's hot. Yeah. How's work?
Yeah,
good.
The only thing you have in common is the fact that your wife knows their wife.
That's it.
And
and then usually that is, y'all have kids in the same age. And then when that kid moves up, the tether gets pulled on everything.
Yeah. It's that ability to be able to sit with, people actually want to be here for this. There's a degree of discomfort.
Not for this, for you.
Yes.
And that's hard to hold.
James, you spoke about him earlier on, the other half of Newtonic. I fucking love this story. I tell it all the time, but I fucking adore it. He did a load of mushrooms. I won't mention the country in case they're going to kick him out. Did a load of mushrooms on a rock. And this question came to him. And the question was, do people love you for who you are or for what you do? And, you know, people loving you for what you do feels transactional, it feels flimsy, it feels volatile. And, you know, the subtext is, if I stopped doing what I do, then the love would be taken away from me as well. What we want is people to love us for who we are, because it feels grounded and forever. It's attached to our sense of self, where our work isn't. And it's rigid, right? And, you know, I told this story on the pod, and someone asked, well, it's an interesting question, but a more interesting question is, do you love you for who you are or for what you do? Because a lot of the time, we want the world to love us for who we are. Meanwhile, we love us for what we do.
That's right.
So you're asking the world to show up for you in a way that you're not prepared to show up for yourself.
That's right.
You don't love you for who you are,
right.
for the fact that you actually care about other people, that you have empathy, that, yeah, sure, it looks a little bit wimpy when you cry at Christmas films, but it's because you've got a soft side to you,
right.
or because you're really reliable, you know, like genuine good traits that are as timeless as you can be. No. You've judged yourself on the last 10 hours of productivity and the fact that you got distracted on YouTube for 30 minutes, despite the fact that you've crushed it. Even if you look at your productivity over the last 6 months, you've crushed it as well. But no. You know exactly where your shortcomings lie and the scabs that you can pick at and the scars, and you know exactly what to say to yourself to torture yourself about these things. And you're not a nice friend to you, but you want the world to be a nice friend to you. You want the world to love you for who you are, meanwhile you love you for what you do.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was such a lovely little...
No, I think that's cut me off if you've heard me talk about this. It was after book number 2 comes out. So I grew up in a house, we didn't have a lot, right? And money was electric. It was always a sense of tension. Always. And the book comes out. My wife and I, she was raised by teachers. My dad was a policeman, and then he became a minister. So a
lot of authority.
My therapist, when I walked in, I was like, my dad's a cop and a minister. She was like, get in the lake house, right? It's very happy.
We've got lots to work with.
Very happy. But both of us come with not a lot, right? And so then you find yourself in this wild new world, right? Of abundance. Don't know psychology for it. I'm downstairs. My family has come, and they've been with us maybe 7 to 10 days, too long. And they know it. I know it. It's that strange, like, it'd be good if y'all left. And they're like, would be good if we left. And it's just that awkward. They leave. I've got COVID as they're leaving. And then I'm working out in the gym in my basement. My manager calls, and he says, hey, you know those 2 speaking event gigs that we were hoping to land? You got a second? And the way he called, I was like, oh, man, we didn't get it. He calls and starts yelling into the phone, we got him! And I start yelling because these were the last 2, like transformational financially for me. And I start cheering. I start yelling, yeah! My wife comes downstairs into the basement. She's like, what are you yelling about? And I was like, we got him! I'm going to speak at this thing and this thing. And she's a very stoic West Texas woman, like just will withdraw and wait till things are calm. She didn't do that. She came forward this time. And she got this close, which is not how she does conflict. And she said, I'm watching my husband die, and I'm watching him cheer the whole way. And I'm gaunt, I'm exhausted, I'm sweaty, I'm sick, I'm peopled out, and I'm cheering. And then she said this. She said, the pie piece, the pie chart of how much I love you, and the pie piece for how much money you make is full. And then she said, we have enough. And she turned and walked away. And I angrily was like, what the hell is enough? I didn't have a psychology for it. And I didn't understand, what does that mean when someone just says, no. I picked you. The joke in our house is she bought real low on me, right? Like she bought when the stock was
Bitcoin at 5 cents.
Really low on me.
Yeah.
She's like, I picked you. And this is cool. This is awesome. But I picked you. And at part of the exchange, she was like, you can go do your speaking events. I told you when I married you, I would never tell you no. Go do it. This is for your ego. This is not for us. And I got hot, but then I went straight to the therapist's office. But we ended up in this moment. She said, I want you to take your fist and put it in your chest and say the words to me, I love this man. And that was the first time I was like, oh, I'm over my head. I'm stuck. I couldn't say the word. I couldn't do that act. And in front of another grown woman, I could not say, I love this guy. And then I was like, oh, I got a problem, right? I'm asking the world to give me something that I won't honor myself to give myself. It's tough. It's tough.
How did you work through that?
Very, very slowly. Very slowly. Yeah. It sounds obscene to think I've got to practice, but I have to practice saying you're a good dad. Yeah, this sounds cheesy. I carry this with me. This is like when the thoughts pop in, like your kids would be better off if you were at home right now. No, they wouldn't. They're doing great. They're right. It's that negative self-talk and just resetting that.
Oh, so you're doing some CBT homework.
That's exactly right.
All the time.
Yeah.
Or
ACT. Yeah.
I've started CBT this year, and I did twice weekly psychotherapy for a year.
Okay.
And
how was that?
Tough, actually. In retrospect, wasn't so tough at the time. I loved it. My therapist was amazing. It taught me an awful lot about myself. It taught me more about myself than 1,500 sessions of meditation and many, many years of journaling, because somebody else is pointing at the things that you've got that are going on inside of your mind. But it opens an awful lot of loops that it doesn't close.
Because there's no action steps. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, yeah.
And maybe for some people who aren't as dopamine norepinephrine as me, that's fine because they can just sit in the story. But if I've got open loops, I'm going to try and fix them. And I think that there's lots of different modalities where people can improve their mental health, where people can improve the quality of their life. Your outcomes may vary, as they say in trading or whatever it is. And I think psychotherapy is really, really useful for learning about yourself, but you need something which is more action focused. So for me, CBT has been fascinating. It's been very rewarding, but fuck, dude, it's hard.
Yeah.
Because for the people that don't know, cognitive behavioral therapy is basically 1 hour a week where you speak to a guy, and then the remaining, whatever it is, 163 hours a week where you do homework.
You challenge the thoughts, yeah.
You do homework. He gives you homework, and it's not, if you looked at the reminders in my phone, you'd think I was a crazy person. I've got like Punch the Bully. It repeats every 3 hours throughout the day. Journaling practice. Anyway, it's been really interesting. But talking about,
I didn't find that as useful. CBT is obviously it's the gold standard. I found the acceptance and commitment. Instead of challenging the thoughts so much, just letting them walk by, or letting them be that guy at the table that always know that guy. Everybody has that friend. And all right, you spoke, and I appreciate it. I'm going to move on.
That's interesting,
and it keeps me from going to war with myself. Otherwise, I stay in constant conflict with myself, and that gets exhausting for me.
Before we continue, do you often feel sluggish, foggy, or crampy throughout the day? That's not just tiredness, that's dehydration calling. Element contains science-backed electrolyte ratio with sodium, potassium, and magnesium, and you will genuinely feel the difference when you take it. Proper hydration isn't just about drinking sufficient water, it's about having enough electrolytes to allow your body to actually use those fluids. Salt plays a critical role in reducing muscle cramps and fatigue while optimizing brain health, regulating appetite, and curbing cravings. Best of all, Element have got a no questions asked refund policy with an unlimited duration, so you can buy it and try it for as long as you want. And if you don't like it for any reason, they just give you your money back, and you don't even need to return the box. That's how confident they are that you'll love it. Plus, they offer free shipping in the US. Right now, you can get a free sample pack of all 8 flavors with your first box by going to the link in the description below or heading to drinklmnt.com/modernwisdom. That's drinklmnt.com/modernwisdom. I wrote this the other day. It kind of, I think it resonates a little bit with what you're talking about there. Some advice on how to support men. Men want to aim high without feeling insufficient if they fall short. Men want their suffering to be recognized and appreciated without being pandered to or patronized and made to feel weak. Men want to believe that they can become more without feeling like they're not enough already. Men want to be able to open up without being judged. Men want support without feeling broken. Men want to be loved for who they are, not for what they do. Too long didn't read. Blending inspiration with compassion is not an easy task. How do I set lofty goals which drive me to fulfill my potential without feeling less than if I don't get there tomorrow, said every guy ever. The desire for self-love and high performance comes into conflict inside of the mind of everyone, men especially. Sure, some men are all drive and goals with non-introspection. And sure, some men are all reflection and inner work with few external desires. But most men desire a mix of encouraged self-belief and understanding support. Inevitably, these two things come into conflict. Basically, every man just wants to hear, I know you can be more, but you are enough already, and even if you just stay where you are, I'll be right here next to you. You're going to be great, but you don't need to be great, and I'm with you no matter what. Or, as said best by Sturgill Simpson's mum, boy, I don't care if you hit it big because you're already number one.
Yeah, that's powerful.
And that reminds me of what your wife said.
Yeah.
You know, like, this is all great, but it also throws into harsh contrast. Why am I doing it? If people love me for who I am, why am I doing what I do?
Yeah. Well, if you're doing it because you think it's going to feel some way on the back end, that's the tale as old as time, right? That's the Jim Carrey speech, right?
I wish everyone could become rich and famous.
It's
so
nonsense.
It's not going to fix the problem.
Yeah, it's nonsense. And I think the alternative that we've got the last 15, 20 years is, well, I'm just going to opt out and play video games. And that's a recipe for disaster too. I think we, Michael Easter's book, The Comfort Crisis, which I think is a masterpiece.
Mm-hmm.
I think we have a culture that's allergic to discomfort. And so I think that tension that's where joy is. That's where meaning is I'm enough and I can hold that loosely enough so that I can hit that guy real hard. Mm-hmm. They had a breakdown on ESPN the other day of Alex Pereira, and they talk about how hard he hits, that it's otherworldly. And they had an interview with a referee. Is like the sound it makes when he hits another human is different, right? And I just thought, man, can you imagine being able to do that? But they say it comes from how calm he is, right? His ability to stay until he uncorks. And my coach used to always say, like, dude, you're like a bear. You're like so tense all the time that it takes away. And so I think if men knew, oh, she loves me no matter what, that actually drives that anchor deep into the concrete so you can rappel off the edge and go do something bananas. Yeah, and it sounds counterintuitive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that you don't need to push me. I'll push myself more if I know that I don't need to.
Let me know I'm anchored. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's a phenomenal piece of advice. And I put that essay out, and perhaps unsurprisingly, a lot of girls, the women who caught a hold of it or follow me on Instagram said, well, like, women want this too. And I'm like, yeah, I'm sure they do.
Can I tell you, that drives me crazy? That makes me insane, dude. Every conversation has to be so universal at all times.
You've got to equivocate.
God almighty. If I write a note on Instagram to dads, that's
what about mums?
Yes, moms too. Mm-hmm. But I failed as a dad in this moment. I'll just write myself a note.
You'll notice that it doesn't really happen in the other direction.
God almighty, dude. It's wild.
I had a conversation with Richard Reeves sat here.
Gosh.
Do you know Richard?
Oh my gosh, yes, of Boys and Men.
Yeah, so he's great. Yeah. American Institute of Boys and Men. And it was the second time he'd been on, and we went for like 3.5 hours. It was phenomenal. And I mentioned I was getting a bit frustrated at the fact that every time I talk about the problems facing boys and men, I need to do this weird social land acknowledgement.
Yeah, dude.
About the fact, well, we must recognize that there is issues that women have faced, and we have to remember that it's only been a recent time that men have been falling behind, and we must not forget the fact that we've got the sexual assault, blah, blah, blah. And after we've gone through all of that, let's begin to talk about men.
It's the Seinfeld. Not that there's anything wrong with that, right? Yeah, everything has to have a qualifier.
And I'm like, can I say this once at the beginning of my career and never have to say it again? Because it's, part of it's clipping culture, that if somebody's able to pull you out of context by not having said the thing, and even if you do, if you say it at the beginning, this happened to me the other day, I said the thing, I said it, and it just got cut off. I'm like, right, well, fuck, I might as well not even
say it. You can't. But what about this? What if as a society, we just chose, I'm going to think the best of Chris?
Well, the problem is,
God almighty, dude.
We don't like to think the best of people, because hypocrisy on the internet is like catnip, right? Being able to catch somebody out. This was the reason. You remember when Joe got popped for his N-word video, which is like 5 minutes of you actually hard-R'ing your way.
Yeah.
A combination of A-ing and hard-R'ing. Anyway, this video goes live, and Joe's like, yeah, fuck, that looks bad. That's not good. And the internet was told by legacy media, this is what this guy's truly like. And this is what it means about him. He's really the secret, bigoted, racist, homophobic, xenophobic, transphobic, blah, 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 that we've always known he was. They were saying, this is the tip of the iceberg, and we know that below it is all of this. But the problem was, most of the people they were trying to convince are like, I've listened to 500 hours of him speaking. You're saying that this is the tip of the iceberg. I've seen the whole iceberg. I know there's nothing down there, or I have a reliable sense that there isn't anything down there. And that situation kind of taught me what gets sucked in, what causes people to get sucked in to this. And the precise thing is a vacuum of information and the speculation, the opportunity for people to point a finger and say, see, I got him. I got him.
Yeah.
And no, the principle of charity is not extended to people on the internet.
But it's not extended to people in our homes. Like the Gottmans say, when you distill all the way down, what makes a great marriage beyond all like religion, finance, are y'all friends? Like I've got a buddy who lives, 5 hours west of here. His name's John too. He was Fat John. I was Hyper John. And back in the day, dude would always leave cans out everywhere. Always, 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 always. The single worst text responder in human history. It doesn't matter. A guy cannot respond to a text. It's phenomenal. Not one time have I ever left his house and thought, leaving cans out. What is he trying to say about our friendship? Not one time. When he doesn't respond, not one time have I thought, does he not love me? What does this mean for us? Not once. He's my friend. That guy stood in front of me and thrown punches on my behalf, literally. He's opened up his house to me for decades. He's my friend, right? But I don't give my wife that. What do these towels mean, right? Or like what is happening in this house? Like, oh, there's a dish in the dishwasher. What is she trying to tell me?
Yep.
Right? And we make this huge character assassination. It's madness. I think what's happening on the internet is a magnification of what happens in our own homes. We're so unsure of ourselves. We walk around with these glasses on trying to find where everybody else has holes so we can be like, yep. And that's the way we try to prop ourselves up to say, I've got value too, right? I can get value by burning everybody to the ground inside my own house.
Our self-worth stands on the shoulders of other people's shortcomings.
That's it. Instead of exhaling and saying, when I walk in the door and there's a pile of towels, good God, what must have her day been like? I just pick up the towels. Or when I walk into John's house, I just pick up the cans. Or when he finally texts me back, right? Like, hey, what's up? I'm like, yeah, I'm happy to hear from him, man.
Yeah.
He's one of my best friends. So it's a madness. It's a madness.
Speaking about challenges, why do you think people regularly get into relationships with partners that they feel like they need to fix?
Yeah, I think that old adage in marriage therapy is true. You marry your unfinished business. I think the way I would describe it is your nervous system puts little GPS pins in there when you're a kid, and you're constantly asking, why doesn't that man love me? He's supposed to. Or why is this shiny little box more important than me? Or why did my mom pick up that bottle of wine and not pick up me? And you constantly are trying to solve that loop. And man, you get older and your body repeats what it knows, and you go in and try to solve that situation again. And you do it again. I was just talking to somebody in the outside of the grocery store the other day, just a minute ago, about the same exact thing. Your body just goes in and tries to solve it again and solve it again. And you got to get outside that loop. Otherwise you just repeat it and you repeat it and you repeat it, because over time you realize, the 7-year-old's not the problem. 7-year-old's never the problem.
Well, I suppose you can become enchanted by a person that you're attached to.
Yeah.
Which fills a literal void inside of you. And when this is a primary caretaker, this is good. But when this is an inappropriate partner, it's not. So you're used to, I think a lot of the time, if you grow up around difficult adults, children can't change or get rid of their caregivers, so they just learn to cope. They
learn to solve it.
Yeah, they learn to hold on to long enough in the hopes that maybe the person will take mercy on them and change. If you're 5, you don't have a passport. You don't know how to leave the house. So you become, if you were not cared for in the way that you should as a child, you learned to become unusually good at surviving on a meager diet of love.
Or you learn to sing and dance and get it, right?
I've got to perform.
I remember one of the coolest things about going back to grad school as an old man is I had to do a practicum again. And I was working with this brilliant man named, a psychologist named Dr. Michael Gomez. And I remember we were sitting with these kids that had some pretty remarkable trauma. And one of the kids was making straight A's. And during a debrief, I said, he's like, all right, who's going to struggle here? Where do we go? And I said, this one's going to be okay. And I said, why? And he goes, well, he's performing well. He's doing grades. He's making great grades. And he said something that has rattled me since. He said, straight A's can be a trauma response too, John. And you can burn a building down. Kids will find a way to be seen, or they'll find a way to hide. They'll find a way to stay safe, and they'll nuzzle up against you. So I think kids are always trying to solve. And yeah, there's some that have to survive on just sips of oxygen, right? Through a straw. But others will be really good on that T-ball field, man, because that makes my dad exhale.
Well, I mean, That's why when we look at, the highest performers in business and content creation output and the world of sports and all the rest of it, for the most part, what you should look at these people with is pity, not envy.
Man.
You think, what has happened to this person to cause them to need to do that to themselves? That's not for me to say that all high performers don't have.
Sure.
Some don't have a good balance of desire for more and running away from past trauma and all the rest of the stuff. Many do, but most don't. Most are doing it because they need validation from the world because they didn't get it when they were a kid.
Yeah. I remember watching that ESPN documentary with Michael Jordan, and there's that scene where he's smoking the cigar in the hotel room, and he looks at the camera and he said, "You don't want this life." And he can't go to the bathroom downstairs. Like, there's just full of people, right? And I remember it cuts to a scene of the banners in the rafters. And again, I'm sitting there on my couch in my small little house. And I just remember looking at all that saying, for what? Like, for 6 pieces of cloth, for glory, like, for what? Right?
It's a weird realization, though, especially when it comes to high performers, because we assume that if we had what they had, we would feel fulfilled. And the reason that they're not fulfilled is because they're ungrateful, not because the fulfillment is hollow.
That's exactly right.
The issue is with them, not with the thing that they've been given, the fuel.
That's right.
Yeah, I think.
And dude, I'm doing the same thing. Like, the moment my first book went number 1, I was in a meeting 2 weeks later, be like, all right, what's the next one? Right? I got right on it, man. And it is, dude, it just taps in, man.
We both do need ACT. But yeah, I think, there's a lot of different insights on the dating somebody that's a problem thing. I think there's an allure of somebody who doesn't love us back. There's an allure of someone.
But the allure is a question. Why? Can I solve this? Can I solve this? Can I solve
Of course.
Yeah.
Because a lot of us like fixing problems.
Because but we also export our value to somebody else.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And if this person doesn't like me, can I morph and change and transform so that I can become likable?
If we can convince someone who doesn't seem to like us all the time to care, maybe that means that we're worthy.
That's right.
Right?
We solved the problem.
Of course. If we can fix them as well, maybe it means that we're fixable too. Like, in their mistreatment of us, we see reflected the same level of mistreatment that we give ourselves.
Right.
We're like, I actually always did think that I wasn't worthy of love. And now it's being given to me. And if I can redeem this person externally, maybe it means that I can fix what it is that I've proven to myself internally as well. I think, the weirdest element of this that I was thinking about was variable schedule reward. So the way that slot machines work. And just that, when you see someone that's in a crazy relationship, turbulent, it's hot and it's cold and it's all the rest of it, you think, what the fuck is, like, what are both of these people getting from this relationship? And I get the sense that you don't know what you're going to wake up to today. It's like, if you don't know what you're going to wake up to today, that might be really painful, but there's just a very, very ancient bit of your brain that fucking loves it.
Yeah.
Exactly. Dopamine's a hell of a drug.
Well, and I actually came to her book through you, Louise Perry's book.
Phenomenal. She was on again this week.
There's a quote in that book that has just bounced around inside my head. It's haunted me, but it's about, have we solved for so many existential issues that plagued humanity forever that we're bored to death?
Oh, this is the exact Maslow's hierarchy of needs thing.
Yeah. But see, I have an unsubstantiated hypothesis about even the Maslow's hierarchy we can talk about.
All right.
But I think we're bored to death. I think our brains are cooking because we've got food at the touch of a button. We got water in every room in our house. We've got these problems solved. And then we need that slot machine, man. And we'll get it from that guy that may take us back, may not, may.
You know the idea of concept creep, where as the incident of something like, let's say, racism becomes less and less over time, the definition of racism expands.
Okay,
so
gotcha.
The level of racism stays the same, but what constitutes racism has changed in order to keep the level the same, because the actual incidents have reduced. In the same way as, I think, climate-related deaths have decreased by 50 times. It's like 98% drop in the last 100 years. Let's say something like that. 168,000 people get lifted out of poverty every single day. So we've had to redefine what climate crisis means. And that's not to say that there isn't a fucking problem with the climate.
Of course, gotcha, yeah.
But yeah, when it comes to in your life, if you're the sort of person who is used to fixing problems, and you don't have many problems anymore, you'll begin inventing them.
Oh, yeah.
You will begin finding them in places where they don't need to be, not because you are a good problem finder, but because you're addicted to solving problems.
Yeah. And my identity is found in I solve problems, and I will manufacture them, and I will create them, and I will seek them out. And my wife will often, she'll gently pat the table or pat my leg when I get off into, and then in Syria, and she's like, we're right here. We're in Nashville. We're in Nashville. And it's such a like, okay, yeah, I can solve this one today.
Thank you.
I can be nicer to my daughter right now.
Yeah. I think on the difficult partners thing, if you don't have a full tank of self-love, how dare you deny the love of somebody else, even if it's tricky or filled with poisonous ingredients? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I don't think of myself that highly, and this person isn't treating me that highly either.
Yeah.
But they're treating me.
Yeah. And it sounds like a cliche thing that I'm always, nobody's going to exercise. Nobody's going to go through the pain of any sort of life change or any sort of relationship change if at the end of the day, you don't think you're worth the change. Right. And so it's easy to keep going out and seeking these nonsensical lack of reality, like truths that exist in our world now, because I don't even think I'm worth doing the hard work right. It's Dave Ramsey's built an empire on live on less than you make. And it's like, that's insane, right? It's madness. That's just math, dude, right? But we create all these other alternate realities to make ourselves go, because I don't even think I'm worth the hard math.
A quick aside, if you're anything like me, packing for a weekend trip somehow takes longer than the trip itself, which is why I've partnered with Nomadic, because this backpack is the best, most beautiful, most life-changing piece of luggage that I've ever found. It's got a compartment for everything. No more playing suitcase Tetris or rolling your clothes like you're some sort of burrito chef. You planned a beautiful trip. Do not let a disorganized bag ruin the vibe. Look, if you're still on the fence about their product, they come with a lifetime guarantee. So this is literally the final backpack that you'll never need to buy. And you can return or exchange any product within 30 days for any reason. So you can buy a new bag, try it for a month. If you don't like it, give you your money back. And they ship internationally. Right now, you can get a 20% discount. See everything I use and recommend by going to the link in the description below or heading to nomadic.com/modernwisdom. That's nomadic.com/modernwisdom. Yeah, I mean, look, we accept the love that we think we deserve.
There you go.
And
that's the problem.
Yeah, because this is why you see people who are consistently in the same sorts of relationships.
It's intellectual cutting. Yeah. It's intellectual self-harm.
Oh, right, yeah.
Like, I'm not worth it. Yeah. I've got to
whip myself into submission.
Yeah. I want to ask you, can we pontificate?
Fire away.
I've been wrestling with Maslow's hierarchy. Once you get above physiology and love, I don't know that this idea of esteem and self-actualization can coexist on top of these things. I think they are interwoven.
Okay.
And I think that we may have given ourselves an illusion that you become actualized as you're choosing to love every day, despite hard things, and how to forgive. And you find esteem by consistently being part of safety and consistently being part of a community and coming back in when you get separated. And this idea that they're separate and somehow we're all going to become this little lighthouse on a hill. I just don't think I think we're at the end of self-actualization. This notion that we can somehow all be little lighthouses on a hill. I don't think that's how we're wired and designed.
I certainly think it's more difficult in the modern world because, let's face it, the safety needs, the basic needs, the survival needs, they're looked after. You don't have to do anything for them.
Yeah.
So all of those needs now, for instance, good example, you're not going to starve. Most people listening to this podcast, I would like to think, aren't going to starve. But that doesn't mean that someone is going to cook a meal and put it on your dinner table. Right? So there's a difference between having food in the house so that the people around you don't starve and serving them through something which they still need.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes.
Is that what you're talking? It's sort of a relationship between the two?
Well, I think implied, especially in the modern world, is, and again, I don't know what Maslow was thinking, but there's absent participation in these bottom rungs. There's an expectation that they're going to exist for us so that I can get to the the more important stuff of sitting in a room and thinking about how great I am.
Oh yeah,
Or
yeah.
painting-
Whole Foods.
painting a
Whole
picture.
Foods has got that sorted. The police have got safety sorted.
Yeah. So the world owes me these things. The world owes me love. The world owes me these things so that I can get to the more important stuff, which is on top. And I think that's false. I think the more important stuff, I will find out, I'll become actualized through a constant lifetime of love.
Well, there's definitely an element that anyone going through an existential crisis, anyone asking themselves, am I really enacting my logos forward? Is this my highest contribution to the world?
Yeah.
Is in a position of ultimate luxury.
That's it.
Because the only chance that you have to ask yourself that question.
But it diminishes the mom who day in and day out and day in and day out and day in and day out. That's self-actualization.
Dude, I want to make moms great again.
Or the dad who, dude, doesn't do the job that we do. He goes up and down 5th and 6th Street collecting trash day after day after day, year after year after year. You don't do that and then hopefully you can get some self-actualization on the side. You're going to look back and say, this city operated because I was a part of it. That's self-actualization, right? It's not this place you go to, this destination that you're removed from these other things. They're tightly integrated.
Yeah, that's interesting. How many people do you know that have reached some degree of success? Two people that I think of, Tucker Max and Ryan Holiday, both of whom live in opposite directions out here from Austin. Two people who, big businesses, very successful, authors, well-known, renowned, money, opportunities, blah, 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 essentially retired to do the thing that they used to do full-time, part-time, and to hammer fence posts in full-time.
Huh.
Like they're ranching and wrangling and fucking hoeing the ground and fixing fence posts and the sheep's got stuck and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Well, why? It's because chopping wood and carrying water actually gives you a sense of satisfaction that it's hard to find elsewhere. But I've been thinking an awful lot about where people take joy and satisfaction from in their work. And for people who maybe have a little bit of agency or self-determination to the sort of work that they do. So you need to be a business owner, but they can maybe contribute to how the teams are put together, maybe part of a small business or a startup, or maybe they are, independent contractor or something like that. And I've been thinking a lot about bands and the way that bands, they have to work very hard, but it's a very enjoyable career. And performing and concerts rank as some of the highest happiness pursuits that you can do. Like huge studies that look at anything that's collective effervescence, especially if you're performing, but also if you're experiencing. And you have to presume that if you're performing, you also get the benefit of experiencing at the same time. And I was thinking, like, okay, so what is it that they're doing that's keeping them going when they're, 50 dates deep into this big long tour and they're in fucking Japan and they're sleep deprived, blah, blah, blah. And I think a big part of it is having other people to share the successes with.
Yeah.
To be able to, and I don't just mean like coming home to your wife and her going, no, thank good for you, honey, or whatever it might be. But a good thing happens and you have someone that you can go, that's fucking sick. You know what I mean? Like, and it wasn't your wife in that moment, but it was your manager.
That's right.
Right? You on the phone to your manager's there screaming down the phone because you're both on a journey together.
That's right.
If you'd done your own bookings, who would you have screamed to?
Yeah, I would have pumped my fist and been like, cool.
And forgotten about it.
Right.
You've got this memory.
That's right.
You wouldn't have remembered it if it was on your own.
That's right.
You wouldn't have remembered it.
Yeah. And then having my wife walk up at one of those events, she surprised me, walked up with a microphone and said, I'm so proud of you. I'll remember that to the day I die. Right? I'll remember that to the day I die. Yeah, because it meant something. It was a shared experience. And kind of like stand-up comedy, I've become obsessed over the last few years, man. I'm just obsessed. I live around the corner from a club in Nashville and I kind of go too much. I love it. But that and music, it's got a pretty tight feedback loop to it.
Exactly. Well, I mean, you have immediate response from the audience.
It's one of the last bastions of human connection.
Yeah,
right?
You play a good note, they make a noise. You tell a good joke, they make a noise.
Yeah.
It's very quick. So yeah, I think just one thing that's come to me, although the internet and remote working have afforded everybody the opportunity to step back and to, I can work from anywhere, man. I can be on the top of a mountain. I can determine my own working schedule. I don't need anybody else. I just need a laptop and an internet connection. I'm good. That's great. But it siloed you off from being able to do the thing that you actually wanted to do, which was enjoy the fucking process of doing the work. Look, some people are just looking to earn in pounds and spend in pesos, and they have whatever, fulfillment that occurs outside of their job. Fine. But if you want to get some fulfillment from your job, I don't think that you can solo Sigma male Lone Ranger entrepreneur it in fucking Bali.
No.
Because when you nail this next client on a sales call for like the biggest deal you've ever, oh my God, like Hewlett Packard are going to use our software. Dude, you just made 20 grand.
Right.
You just made 20 grand. Oh, it's just me that made 20 grand. Who am I going to celebrate with? And I'm fired up, kind of, but I'm not that fired up because the whole reason that you want to win something is so that you can go with other people.
That's the Wolf of Wall Street. DiCaprio's character, it looks like he's addicted to the deal. I don't think he was. I think he was addicted to the room cheering.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? To that celebration.
Mm-hmm.
And the deal gets you that, right?
Yes. So that becomes the proxy. And all the money is just the number that you get to like shout in the air with everybody else.
That's it. And the awe and the, oh my gosh, how'd you do that? That's amazing.
So a perfect example of this, I'm going to go and do, it looks like, it's the first time I'm talking about it, I'm going to go and do a tour around America and Canada.
Outstanding.
Later this year.
Come to Nashville, please.
It's booked.
Is it?
Oh, yeah.
Outstanding.
So as a part of that, I'm going to get to, I don't need a warm-up, right? It's 2 hours of me talking on stage. I'm going to take a warm-up. Because I want someone to finish the show with and fucking high five. And it might be Zach, my ex-housemate who plays guitar. It might be James Smith from Australia. It might be somebody. I might get, guests to come and do warm-up. But I want someone there with me so that I don't go back to the hotel on my own and think about how good or how bad it was.
Bro.
You know what I mean? Like,
Dude.
I've got friends who are DJs, dude. I've got friends. DJing looks from the outside like the most dialed life in the world. Let me tell you, it is on the come up. Before you've got your tour manager with you, before you've got an opener with you, before you've got like a structure around you, it's kind of a bit like hell.
Uh-huh.
You're playing until 3 a.m. If you've got back-to-back gigs, I have a friend who played a gig on a Monday in Argentina, Buenos Aires, something. And the next time he got to sleep in a bed was Saturday. So it was Monday to Saturday. And he played 4 gigs over 5 time zones of whatever it was. And, he ended up basically having like a small psychotic break. Talked about it on the podcast years ago now. And he came to in a supermarket, sat on the floor, and he had laid around him one of every different type of hair product. He'd been scooping it up and putting it on his head because he realized his hair was shit.
Yeah.
Grabbed a floret of broccoli 48 dishwasher tablets and walked out. He had a full, part psychotic break. And you think, that doesn't sound fun. But from the outside, it's, oh my God, he's living his dream. He gets to play his music around the world. Like, careful what you wish for.
Comes at a cost, man. Yeah.
Especially on your own.
Yeah. There's always a trade.
Talking about, I guess, the next step, people get into relationships with those that they feel like they need to fix. Why do people stay in relationships even if they're not being fulfilled?
Talk to me about fulfillment. And I think sometimes that's the model you have. I think sometimes I'm not worth my needs being fulfilled. Sometimes I don't even know what that would feel like if my needs were fulfilled. And so kind of what you talked about earlier, I'm just going to keep expanding what my needs need to be because my need is actually seeing how high you can jump. And it just keeps expanding. But I think for most of us, we don't have a model of what it looks like. Our moms and dads, if you look at the demographics across, like, there was only one parent in the house, or they were co-managers of the house, they didn't even like each other, right? And I've got no picture of what someone who actually loves me and is connected with me and quote unquote needs. And by the way, I've been struggling lately, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this. I've been struggling with the idea of needs. Because I think needs have turned modern relationships into a very parasitic relationship. And I think beneath that, a more vulnerable, scary question to ask is what I want. And I think it's easy if I lob a need grenade at you. I need you to do these things, this, and this, versus, man, I really want you to X, Y, and Z. Because one of those, I kind of take out I need this, and if you don't do this, then you're not performing. Or I really want you. Do you want me to? Do you see me?
Oh, that's lovely.
And so I think most of us are so terrified at asking the want question of ourselves and of our partner that we cast it all as needs.
Right, because the want can be denied.
That's right.
But the need can't. Or the want could be denied, but the need should not.
If you deny my needs, you're an ass. If you deny my wants.
Because you might not want.
That's different. One of the most common questions I get from married men is, I just want her. I just want more sex, right? I want more sex. I want better sex, etc. But they come at it with, I need more sex. But if you need something, then it goes on the chore list, along with the diapers and the this, and I got to clean the kitchen,
which is unbelievably sexy.
I'll get you off, and then I'm gonna go to bed, right? A way more terrifying question for a modern male is to a wife with 2 kids, and it's exhausting, and you're both working full time. I want you. Do you want me? And if you don't, we need to have that conversation. What would desire look like? That's a scarier conversation, man. And there are basic needs, so I don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater. But I think most of this comes down to wants. And that's terrifying.
That's an awesome reframe. That's really good. Yeah, I think in the process of defining our wants and risking the potential for somebody to be unprepared to fulfill them for us, we feel less than.
Yeah. Or we don't have a psychology for being wrong. I think you've talked about this on another show that I listened to. Before I went to college, I went to this very well-meaning Texas church camp, and they took us 18-year-old guys in a room, and they were like, the world's going to destroy you. So write down right now what your non-negotiables for your life partner will be. Write them down right now, because they're going to get watered down and the edges rubbed off. It's going to be bad.
Oh, okay. So you were sort of at this purest.
Yeah. Before the world soils you.
Right. Okay.
Write down
this is actually what you're really going to want.
Your 10 non-negotiables.
Okay, yeah.
I'm 26 years with the same person, the same woman, and I think she had 2 of the 10, and one of them was be a pretty girl, right? Like be a beautiful woman. And so it's when I say I want something, so often my manager's, that's his job, is to be like, you don't want that. Like, I really want this. You don't want that, right? And we don't have a psychology for being wrong. We just are so led around the nose by our feelings. I feel. And man, I can get what I want when I cast it in the form of a need. And you have to meet it.
That's fascinating. I suppose as well, it goes back to, what do you think you deserve? And if
we don't have a man, if you had to fight and scratch and claw and sing and dance in a 3rd grade math class to get your mom to look you in the eye, you don't think you're worthy of a want. You know what I mean? If you had to sing and dance on a soccer field for your dad to pat you on the back, no eye contact, of course, but just pat you on the back, you don't think you're not worthy of wanting anything. Everything has to be a need.
Well, also, what was the model of needs and wants and desires being requested and fulfilled in the household? Because, a lot of the generation that are growing up now and are asking themselves these questions, their parents, they didn't have that sort of communication education.
No.
There wasn't podcasts and fucking Arthur Brooks and all of this stuff to help everybody through. So you go, okay, well, what was the model of how to communicate the things? Well, what about like passive aggression?
That's it.
What about shadow sentences? What about not requesting what you need and then getting bitter about the fact that you never got it?
Yeah, we were cast in movies we didn't even know we were in, and we got in trouble for not knowing the lines, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you didn't attend a party you weren't invited to.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. And then how dare you not show up?
Yep.
Right. Yeah.
Yep. And you don't know. So yeah, I think the sense of what are you worth? What are you worth? What should you get out of this? And do you even know what it is that you're asking for?
Yeah.
Like, have you got an idea of it? And I guess, okay, moving one step forward from this, if somebody feels convinced that they should leave a relationship, but they're struggling to accumulate the bravery to be able to sort of pull the pin, maybe they've got close a few times and they've bailed out, what would you say to sort of motivate that person who deep down knows that it's the right thing to do, but as of yet, just the courage kind of hasn't come to them?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's a practical aspect to this, and then I think there's a relational aspect to this. If there's a very real, the data is pretty clear that more women file for divorce, but women's net worth often plummets, right? And so there's a very real economic consequence. So if you're married to somebody, if you're living with somebody, and I got to get out of this thing, there's a very real math problem you have to solve, and that's unfortunate and that's scary, and the social services are pretty tough, but there's a very real question.
I suppose the equivalent would be the same for men, but in reverse, paying alimony.
That's exactly
blah, blah.
right. Yeah. And so I think there's a math problem there. Not to say stay together for the math, right? I haven't seen that bumper sticker, but there's a very real reality to this. The other side of it is, I know for most of us, when emotions are a sign, especially strong emotions, are a sign that your body's trying to protect you. And when your body's trying to protect you, you're not thinking. And so for me, it's been very important to have a couple of men in my life that I outsource some of these things to. I'm gonna sit down with you, make sure I'm seeing this thing clearly. Because here's what I'm feeling. And it's been more than once in my life when I sit down with a few of my old 30-year plus ride or die buddies, and I'm like, she's doing this and this and this. And they're like, have you looked in a mirror, man? And they're able to see something, right? No warrior goes into battle without eyes in the sky. And so I think I often, or in our Lone Ranger cowboy world we live in, man, it's, you got to know all this, I'll do this by yourself. And so I'm constantly telling people, dude, go get a cup of coffee with somebody and just exhale. And then tell them what's going on. And they may say, hey, there's a common thing on my show. Someone will call and be like, my sex life's screwed up. We have only had sex twice last year. It's a disaster. It's falling apart. And then 10 minutes into the conversation, it's like, well, we have a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, a 1-year-old, and she's pregnant. I'm like, bro, hang up the phone and call me back. Like, you'll have survival sex. Y'all are figuring this thing out. Like, you're not broke and it's okay, right? But that's just, you just need somebody to sit with you. But when it comes to courage and bravery, I think at some point we have to head into the discomfort. I mean, that's all Judd Brewer stuff on anxiety, right? You got to head into it, the thing that you're scared about and anxious about.
We'll get back to talking to John in just 1 minute, but first, I need to tell you about Function. Staying on top of your health requires more than just an annual physical, which is why I partnered with Function. They run lab tests twice a year that track over 100 biomarkers and monitor for early signs of thousands of diseases. They even screen for 50 types of cancer at stage 1, which is 5 times more than you get from an annual physical. You receive insights from a team of expert physicians who provide detailed written clinician summaries of their observations and phone consultations for any critical findings. Getting these lab tests done would usually cost thousands, but with Function, it's only $500. And right now, you can get the exact same blood panels that I get and bypass their waitlist by going to the link in the description below or heading to functionhealth.com/modernwisdom. That's functionhealth.com/modernwisdom. Yeah, I think some of the questions that I've asked friends about when they've been on the fence, unsure, scared about being alone, about losing this attachment, one of the things is how much of your life is thinking about this breakup taking up? Like, what other productive or peaceful or mindful thoughts is this taking the space of?
Yeah.
How often are you not present at dinner? Or not present at work, or trying to meditate or train in the gym or do any of the things that usually bring you joy, and you're not thinking about where you are. And
that's when someone says, hey, should I break up with them? I'm thinking about this. I always say, absolutely, you should break up with them. And I just watch. And if their shoulders drop, if their face drops, that may be the right move.
Yeah,
and
because they've got a sense of relief.
Like, no.
Yeah. They've got a sense of relief from that being on the other side. They're just asking you for permission.
That's right.
They're just asking you for permission. There's this great, Rick Hansen, he wrote Hardwiring Happiness. Dude, unreal.
Okay.
Imagine CBT meets Dharma wisdom, meets mindfulness, meets neuroscience. It's
Give me his name.
Hardwiring Happiness by Rick Hansen. He's got a phenomenal podcast with his son, Forrest Hansen. I think it's called Being Well. And he dropped this quote that said, wisdom is choosing a greater happiness over a lesser happiness. And I think, a lot of the time we assume that change is only ever going to make things worse, even though when we look back, almost all changes have made things better.
But we don't fear change, we fear loss.
True. Yeah. But that's uncertainty. We don't necessarily feel loss, we fear uncertainty.
That's right. Yeah.
Right? Because losing an abusive partner you're not fearing that, you're fearing the uncertainty of what it would be like to be without them. We have 2 needs as humans. We have an exploration need and we have a security need.
Yeah.
Right?
That's their intention, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Novelty and
yeah. Novelty, safety.
Yeah.
You need to go out and get some berries. You need to go to a new bush because this one's empty. But also there's a risk of going there because there might be a lion behind it and it might kill you. I think one of the things that's really useful is to try and have faith that you are the sort of person who can handle change well. Like, just to think about that as an ideal. Like, it makes a world inside of your mind where you don't need to fear things adjusting because change has happened in the past and you seem to deal with it quite well then.
Mm-hmm.
Change is going to happen in the future. You're probably going to deal with that.
Mm-hmm.
So why not this one? Like, why not back yourself to be able to be the sort of person who can deal with change well?
Yeah.
Like, you've got this, you're flexible, and you're okay in different situations. And yeah, unfortunately, a lot of the people who have the opportunity to choose partners, to not just have to settle for the first thing that happens, to have different life opportunities, to move away from their town, they are probably quite hard workers. And the problem with being a hard worker is that you have to have a pain tolerance. And if your pain tolerance is quite high, that means that your pain tolerance for emotional deprivation is quite high, which means that you'll stick about in a relationship that isn't serving you for a very, very long time.
Just keep going and going and going and going. Because that's what we do.
Yeah, you're used to putting your nose against the grindstone and things being tough.
Yeah.
And coming out the other side and going, well, I wasn't that happy, but fuck, I got through it.
Yeah, I got through it.
Because in the past, in other areas of life, in the gym or in diet or in building your meditation habit or in business or in skill acquisition, you have learned to associate delayed gratification. You're basically marshmallow testing your way through life, right? Over and over again. And you go, well, look, there's certain things that you just kind of need to embrace the suck.
Yes.
And on the other side of which there will be maybe not happiness, but meaning and fulfillment and well-being. And perhaps downstream from that, you get some like fun and enjoyment and happiness and blah, blah. But probably not in your relationship, right? I don't think anybody's going to congratulate you on your deathbed for saying he suffered in silence. You know what I mean?
Yeah, except that I don't know that, I mean, it takes two to tango, right? But I think that makes suffering the inevitable outcome. And I remember when my wife and I were sitting across the table, like the message I sent to her, because we weren't speaking, was no crying, no fighting, no screaming. And this was self-directed. I'm the emotional one. We gotta say, are we still doing this? This is it. Like, because the marriage we've had up till now is over. Like, are we gonna keep doing this? But I remember that conversation when we both came to the realization we have both mutually chosen a miserable marriage. And the beauty is we can choose a not miserable one. And I think that agency of choice has been taken away by a culture of disempowerment. So I think the idea of like, it's either bail or suffer in silence, I think I don't think it's that binary. I think you can also both be like, dude, we chose suck. And I did something, whoever you may be, I stepped out on the marriage. I gambled a bunch of money away. Like I did an extra bad thing, if you want to frame it like that. We can both choose something different. And that to me is it's not on the table anymore. But if you look past, the same thing happens relationally. Those who stick it out and they choose something different, choose something magnanimous, which is very on Romeo and Juliet, right? You're supposed to just be star-crossed lovers. It's stupid. It's nonsense. You choose it and you keep choosing it and you keep choosing it. Man, you see people who've been through hell and they're on the other side. That's the goofy guys that have real short shorts on and no business wearing that short of shorts at the beach, and they don't care, right? Because she loves him. Yeah. Right. And it's a different kind of depth to that love.
I've heard you say before about how the time, I think this was your conversation with Arthur Brooks, the time when you want to pull away the most is the time when you're supposed to lean in.
I did it last night with my daughter. She's 9 years old, man. She's got a supernatural ability. She knows where every single hidden buttons I didn't even know I had. She just knows. And she screaming and hollering and yelling and doing her 9-year-old stuff and started to walk away. And I literally went downstairs to head out the door with the dog to go for a walk. And I stopped. This is that moment. That's when Arthur Brooks is ringing in my head. And you turn around, you walk back in. Damn it, Arthur. And I went and climbed into bed with her. And my wife's reading a book. And I just climbed. She shoves me out of the way. I move. And then within 30 seconds, you hear her breathing different. And then she reaches over and grabs your hand. And that's what dads do. Emotionally immature children run off. Dads go right through it.
Like, yeah, you had a child-on-child war about to begin.
It's my inner 7-year-old. Bro. That's right.
Dude.
Was it who? It may have been. It may have been Sal Di Stefano that I called recently and was like, hey, I'm having a disagreement with my 14-year-old, and he just started dying laughing. He goes, I was going to stop you right there. And I was like, what am I doing? And I was like, I'll call you. No, it was Lane Norton. I called him. I was like, hey, I'm arguing with my 14-year-old. And he goes, how about I just stop you right there? And I was like, what do I do, right?
Yeah.
I do this for a living. And it happens.
Yeah.
Right?
That's fucking funny.
And then you roll it off and you move on, right?
You know, one final thing that I heard that I thought was such a fucking great rubric for how do you know if you've sort of really given this as good of a shot as you can in a relationship before you decide to pull the pin? And it was, you know, that you've made a serious effort by comparing the level of effort that you've put in to the people that you admire and the level of effort that they bring to something before they decide to quit. Like, just think about that. Think about how much effort the people that you admire, the friends around you, people in your life, the people you look up to, think about how much effort they put into something before they go like, it's time to stop trying to grow roses in this parking lot. And I think that gives you confidence in your view that it's time to move on. You go, any other reasonable person would have said this is too much. Even the best of the reasonable people, which are the people presumably that I admire. Because I think what everybody wants to hear when they've got a really existential disagreement in a relationship is, you know what, man, you're not crazy.
Yeah, that's it.
You're not crazy for thinking that. And you go,
that's it.
Oh my God, because I was racked with so much self-doubt. And I thought this was me being petty. I thought this was me, and a lot of the times it is, right? Yep. And you need to know. That's why you got to have fucking Lane on the
people.
phone.
That's right.
But I thought it was me being petty. I thought it was me being juvenile. I thought I was being rash. And someone goes, "You're not crazy. You're not crazy for feeling like that." I think that's completely an acceptable position to hold. Fuck. Well, what do I do now?
Yeah.
I actually have a firm, because you get stuck in, are my desires legitimate? Should I be able to, is it okay to want what I want?
Yeah.
And, you know, if you've had a life of marshmallow testing your way through things, you have learned to not want what you want.
That's it.
You've learned to put off the things that you want in place of doing something that's harder or more boring.
I think the illusion, though, is it's going to feel a certain way. Right? If I get what I want, that suddenly it's going to extrinsically fill that gap.
Oh yeah,
in my chest. And I think when you, I remember telling my counselor recently, my therapist recently, I just want to feel what I know. And that was a heavy sentence that I'd never said before. But it's like, I know these things to be true, but I want to be able to feel them here, right? And that becomes the word, getting from here to here. And that's
a lot of people, especially now, are, you know, what do you say? Physiologically decapitated from the neck down.
I love that.
You know, they just exist. And, you know, this is me speaking to me as I desperately try to get more embodied with stuff. But, dude, feeling feelings is really fucking hard.
Yeah, it's hard.
I went on a journey over the last year of trying to do it, speaking to Connor Beaton, speaking to like every different expert that I could find to talk about, okay, so what does it mean to tap into your emotions? What does it mean to feel feelings? You know, Joe Hudson, you familiar with him? Art of Accomplishment, going on a 7-day retreat the back end of September with him called Groundbreakers. And they've got clinical studies showing that it moves neuroticism longitudinally, it nudges neuroticism in the direction that you want it to. It makes a bunch of other personality changes. But he was like, it's like Navy SEAL Hell Week for your emotions. So don't book anything for the next week.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited. I'm going to get daunted as I get closer to it. But yeah, man, it's one of the most interesting questions talking about wants is, what do you want to want?
Yeah.
I adore that question. It's an essay by Kyle Eschenroder from years ago. His website has now been taken over by like a Ukrainian porn thing. You know, someone's got a hold of the WordPress logins and they've changed his website. But I downloaded the PDF, so I revisit it pretty regularly. And the question of what do you want to want? You know, because your desires define the path of least resistance that your life is going to take. And a lot of the time, people...
Wait,
your desire,
unpack that.
So the things that you want, your desires, will pull you in a direction that is the easiest for you to go.
Even if that is very difficult.
Even if it's very difficult. Yeah, of course.
Okay.
And even if it is painful, even if it's toxic, even if it's malignant to the world at large,
Yeah.
the things that you want, it's the old, the man who loves to walk will walk
There you go. Yeah,
further
yeah,
than
yeah,
the man
yeah,
who
yeah,
is
yeah.
forced to walk or whatever.
Yeah.
Your desires define the paths of least resistance inside of your life.
Okay.
So what you want to do is align the things that you want with the things that you want to want.
Okay.
Because if you don't ever step in and ask yourself what you actually want to want, you end up having your desires defined for you by the worst parts of yourself.
That's exactly right.
And by society at large,
That's
and
right.
by the way that you've dealt with past traumas, and by the paths of least resistance, and all of this stuff. It all comes together. And then if you're not careful, you end up in a place, not only that you don't want to be, but that you didn't even mean to get to.
Yes. And it doesn't solve the problem you thought you were trying to solve.
Because what you wanted was not what you wanted to want.
So my wife's way of asking that question, we were sitting at that table, was one hand on the table, like, how do you want this house to feel when you walk in every day? And dude, I vomited.
Oh,
I was like, dude, I want you to want that I'm here. I want you to be happy that I'm here.
Mm-hmm.
I want my daughter to come running at me. Like she had a
daddy.
With like a inside of a wrapping paper roll.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always in this sword fight with her that I don't even know him, right? Okay. I want my son making fart noise. Like, I want the house to feel warm. Mm-hmm. She's like, okay, then you can't bring that last meeting in here. Mm. And you got to work out. And you and I both know when you eat like this and this and this, we get the downstream grumpy dad 3 days later. And it became that, how do you want this place to feel when you walk in the room, in the house?
What a great question. Oh
and let's reverse engineer
that. Who the fuck's your wife?
She's Yoda, dude. Yeah. She's a Yoda. Absolutely. She's just a wise, still.
I didn't realize that you were the relationally retarded one.
Oh, are you kidding me? Yeah, dude.
The guy that's got the call-in show is the one that actually doesn't know anything about it.
But she never would have been at a punk rock mosh pit if it wasn't for me, so there you go.
Yeah, it's very important.
We each bring our pieces to the relationship.
Yeah. Okay, taking one step forward, what is your advice for how people can better move on from breakups? They've got this...
Gosh, that's a great question.
Rumination, they're struggling, checking the social media, everything reminds them of them. I'm never going to find anybody as good. How do people move on from relationships?
We've got a allergy to grief in our culture. Like, that's a natural process. We used to have a room in the house called the parlor, where the body would rest for 2 to 3 to 4 days before it was buried. And now we outsource that and we call it the living room. I think it was a Southern Living that declared it in the early 1900s. Like, it's no longer the parlor; it's now the living room, right? But we've just plucked grief out of our lives. Just this reality that things don't always work out. And we had a collective group of people. You sat in the home with a dead relative right there, right? That was just a part of the grieving process. And the body's got ways that you begin to breathe again. Mm. And somebody shows up with food, and somebody shows up with food, and somebody shows up with food. And, right? It's like being at the beach and it feels like you're drowning, but you stand up and the water's just only 3 feet deep, right? And we've just, so if you leave a long-term relationship, dude, the number of students that would come into my office and be like, hey, I'm depressed. My dad just moved out on my mom. And I always like, maybe you're clinically depressed, but I bet you're sad. And they didn't have a psychology for that. Like, we don't do that. That's a thing we solve. We solve for sad. Like, no, man, that's a basic human emotion. Let's just be sad. Like, your family broke up. Your dad left. Let's sit in that. And so if you lose an important relationship, man, your body's working right if it wants you just to stay under the covers for a while. Your body's working right if you don't want to go out. Your body's working right if you don't, like, if you're like wondering, am I lovable? That's not something to be solved, man. That's something to just sit with. And if you don't have people in your life, man, your body's going to spin out on you, dude, because it knows it can't carry that burden alone. It is. We have to have a place for grief, for being sad. And I think in our current world, the only way to do it is to be what looks radical, right? I'm going to block people. I'm going to delete people. I'm going to take my phone off. I'm going to have a group of people that are going to come to my house every night for 2 weeks. And we're going to play stupid board games, something stupid, right? Or whatever. I'm going to give myself permission to not go out for a month because I'm tired. I just feel dry. Like, man, that's called just honoring the system, man. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's honor the system. Because you're going to duct tape over that thing. In counseling, we say call it leakage. It'll find a way out. and it usually finds a way out at a real inopportune time, or you can honor it and invite somebody to sit in there with you.
How can you tell if you've got leakage? What are the most typical forms of leakage?
Oh, rage. Saying the words, if they would just, and I don't even care who and what you're talking about. If they would just.
The guy in the car next to you.
Doesn't even matter. If they would just. Yeah, if you start making up imaginary stories about people, like I hear from most folks across the country that happens in the shower. You start having imaginary conversations with people that you'll never have in real life. If I see Chris again, dude, I'm going to tell that dude that you're never going to do that. It's your body just trying to spin up. Brene Brown calls it dress rehearsing tragedy. When you are just constantly in a loop of planning the next sword fight that you're going to just do the super move at the end, man. And your body doesn't know the difference, man. So it goes to war in the shower. You ever done that? You step out and you come out of your bedroom and your partner's in there and you're mad. And they have no idea. And they're just eating, right? You're like, how can you just be
had
eating?
A 15-minute argument with you,
dude. Yeah. And by the way, I crushed you in that argument. It's insane. Yeah. Or you see your boss the next day after a night of like, I'm going to tell, you're not going to tell him anything, right? So it's when you go into solution solving mode, I'm rage, fighting, running, hiding. Man, we broke up. We had plans. I'm going to sit here. Hey, this is going to be weird. Will you come over to my house? Let's bring tacos. And I'm not going to talk to you because it's going to be weird. So I'm just going to sit here. We're going to play video games. Right? You can watch a stupid game with me. I'm going to a show. I bought 2 tickets. We're going to a show. No asking me about so-and-so, but we're just going to go. You're too old to be mosh pitting, John. I know. We're going anyway. Right? And it's just honoring. You're supposed to be sad. You're supposed to be sad. And then if you wake up 90 days later and it becomes, you're skipping work, you need to call somebody. Right? That's when it becomes a pathology. You gotta call somebody.
This episode is brought to you by 8 Sleep. If you struggle to stay asleep because your body gets too hot or too cold, this is going to help. Just add 8 Sleep's Pod 4 Ultra to your mattress like a fitted sheet, and it automatically cools down or warms up each side of your bed up to 20 degrees. Plus, it's got integrated sensors to track your sleep time, sleep phases, your HRV, your snoring, and your heart rate with 99% accuracy. And it'll even start cooling or heating your bed for you an hour before bedtime, which is why 8 Sleep has been clinically proven to increase total sleep by up to 1 hour every night. That is the ultimate game changer. This thing is fucking magic, and I can't believe it exists. And when I travel on the road, it feels primitive and medieval and awful, and I hate it. And you need one in your life. Best of all, they have a 30-day sleep trial, so you can buy it and sleep on it for 29 nights. And if you don't like it, they will give you your money back. Plus, they ship internationally. Right now, you can get $350 off the Pod 4 Ultra by going to the link in the description below or heading to 8sleep.com/modernwisdom and using the code modernwisdom at checkout. That's EIGHT sleep.com/modernwisdom and modern wisdom at checkout. I seem to remember in Lost Connections, Johan Hari's book.
Yeah, man, what a great book.
That there's a carve out in the DSM for grief around depression.
Yeah, which to me undermines the whole, dude, don't get me started on DSM, but that's a whole other thing.
It makes sense to me though, that if you were to say, I feel depressed, my dad died yesterday, or I broke up with my girlfriend yesterday. Okay, the emotion might be that of depression. Right? So the symptoms are correct, but the diagnosis that's caused the symptoms or the cause of the symptoms seems to not fit.
It's completely irrelevant. Yeah. All diagnosis is in the DSM is a symptom of clusters. I mean, a cluster of symptoms, right? That's it. But it's totally devoid of context.
The point being,
you should be not sleeping, or you should be sleeping all day. You should not be able to control your thoughts or have just fog in your head.
Correct.
All those things are right. Your dad died. There's not it's David Kessler, who I think is the world's foremost guru on grief. He says it's like a fingerprint, man. Everybody looks different. And that's why we're trying to solve it.
I spoke to Human about this years ago, first ever episode that we did. And I was talking about getting over breakups, and he said that it's the exact same circuits as grief.
That's exactly right, as death.
The problem is that they're still alive.
Yeah.
And you can be in touch with them. You can resurrect this dead person. So imagine that a person that you felt the closest to died, but you had a button that could resurrect them, and it happens to be in WhatsApp.
Yeah.
And there is always this sort of rumination, this potential, so I think, that's why.
It sounds cheesy, but I always recommend somebody have a ceremony.
Okay, like a funeral for your
small
relationship.
yeah, and that can be like Sex in the City, like this big glory. It doesn't have to be that, but it is. And I love Kessler also says grief demands a witness. You can't grieve by yourself. Just biochemically, you can't do it by yourself. You got to have other people. And so I'm gonna sit with you, and we're gonna burn the letter. We're gonna write whatever the mean thing is. But when we wake up tomorrow, probably a little bit hungover, a little bit exhausted, there's gonna be a period at the end of that sentence, and I'm just gonna be sad because I'm gonna reach to grab my phone to call her, and I'm not calling her. I'm gonna pick up my phone. It's gonna be no text.
It's so interesting, the ceremony.
Yeah, you have to give your body a period at the end of that sentence. And we just rob ourselves of it. We just go to the next, swipe right. And we got to exhale. You're not broken. I love that circuitry that gets reused was really eye-opening for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's a loss. It's a loss. It happens a lot with parents too. When you become 35 and you're like, hey, that was abuse. And they're like, you coming for Christmas? And you're like, I don't know, man. You know what I mean? That one's a tough one. It happened a lot during Me Too, where
that wasn't so dialed that he touched me like that.
Well, it was like, it's like he's a great dad. We have 3 kids. He's a good provider, good husband. We have a great time. Hey, I think that was rape back in college. What do I do now? Right?
My God.
And it's you're talking about like a real psychological train wreck, man. That's tough. And those are hard things to navigate.
I mean, fuck that. This is one of the challenges, I suppose, of doing inner work, of doing any kind of introspection, that you start turning over these rocks or looking through, I'm going to open these doors inside of this house I've lived in my entire life. And then you realize that every so often you open one and there's a fucking demon hiding in there, covered in shit.
Yeah. Well, and I wonder if man, we can go down a whole rabbit hole in this. That's for another show. I remember my high school metal band. We played at this event at the end of our senior year it's called Mike Stock. It was an old skating rink. And Chris, to say that we crushed it, bro, I'm talking legend. Any record exec on planet Earth would have signed us that day. It was legend. Crushed it. I went to college with my head held high. The band kind of dissolved. Then, like my sophomore year of college, I'm at home back in Houston with my family. Somebody calls, right? Bro, we found a VHS of the show. Somebody had one of those big box VHS. Dude, we piled around the TV. Yo, it was not good. It was so bad, dude. I forgot the words. It was a disaster. It was not good. I forgot somebody broke a string. And it got me thinking evolutionarily, like my body created a story for that moment. And me going back, this technology that has never existed, those old photo albums that have never existed for all of human history, I don't know if that's super good for us. And it's magnified now with kids who are like, Mom, take a picture. Mom, let me see. Can I see the video of me, the thing I just did? That sort of recursive world, man, we're playing roulette with our nervous system.
Strange, right? Because
we're not designed to see that stuff.
Yeah, but as you just mentioned, in one way, sometimes we don't want to remember the shit that happened.
That's exactly right. So there's a protective measure to it.
Correct. Yeah, the psychological immune system, as it's known. Adam Masriani has this thing where he says, the closest thing to an equation in psychology is tragedy plus time equals comedy. And something that's atrocious that happened a while ago.
Yeah.
Can actually be funny.
That's what healing is, right? That my body doesn't go to war again. It doesn't act as though it's happening again.
Let's say
but you experienced it with your psychoanalysis, right? Like it just opens a bunch of loops, man. And now it's like, I got a whole bunch of other work to do now.
Yeah, and I think a couple of the things that happened there, Stan Tatkin did Your Brain on Love, best book on attachment that I've ever listened to. Only exists as an audiobook, Your Brain on Love by Stan Tatkin.
Excellent.
Fucking outstanding.
Okay.
And he talks about how memories get moved from short-term memory to long-term memory, and sometimes they sit in both. And if you've got them sitting in both, that's really, really dangerous, because the short-term memory is, this is still salient and I need to keep a hold of it.
The situation's live.
It keeps on feeding it and feeding it and feeding it. And what you want to do is like clear that shit out. So he has 2 really great bits of advice for relationships. He doesn't want stuff to get into long-term memory. So he says you have an incident that occurs with your partner, a triggering event of some kind. And he says your goal should be, you need to be able to do this in less than about 2 minutes. So you need to plan and you need to talk about how you do this. Something happens. Your partner sort of jibs you at the dinner table and it really sort of sets you off. You're in front of someone that you're trying to get a promotion from, or somebody you respect, or just a friend or a family member or something, and your partner does something that really, really gets to you. You need to be able to, as quickly as possible, in less than about 2 minutes, go to one side and say, hey, look, like that thing that just happened. And the partner needs to be able to at least bring you back down. They don't need to fix it. It's like, look, we can talk about this properly later on. I just wanted to tell you how much I love you. I'm really sorry that I didn't mean to do that. To just like, because the longer that you leave that, there's unspoken expectations are premeditated resentment.
That's it, yeah.
And that gets ported over into long-term memory, and that's going to stick about. The other problem that you have is when, as you know from CBT, which is that, what's that eye tracking thing that they do?
EMDR, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
What are you doing with that? You're trying to move things that are already too locked into short-term memory. Your body still thinks they're long-term memory, but they're in short-term. They're trying to get it out of short-term memory and push it across it, because you're not going to be able to get rid of it from long-term memory anymore. So you have two choices. Cut it off so it doesn't go at all.
Yeah.
But then sometimes it's gone and it's still here in short-term memory, so you need to get rid of it from that too. So you've got EMDR for the stuff that's stuck about for too long. And basically, as far as I can tell, if when you think about a memory, an uncomfortable memory, traumatic thing that happened in your past, if it still creates an emotional response inside of you, your heart rate rises, you get hot, you get flustered, it makes you feel agitated. If you see it from a first-person perspective, if you're watching it through your own eyes, as opposed to sort of watching it from above and behind, if you can still sort of hear the sounds very viscerally, all of this suggests that it's still in short-term memory. And I'm going to guess there's like a million ways.
Dude, I love that. Ethan Cross talks about a great way to get out of loops is to talk to yourself in the third person.
Yes, that's from his new one, right?
Yeah, it's fantastic. Like, hey, John, we're all right.
What are you going to do about this?
Yeah.
Instead of, John, you fucked
up. What am I? All right, John, you messed up.
Yep.
John, you should go tell her you're sorry.
Yep.
Oh, I need to tell her I'm sorry. And man, we're off to protection.
Your ability to argue with yourself is impressive. What would you say, maybe someone's listening and, hey, fuck, I think that thing that happened earlier on in my life, I think that was like kind of messed up, and I haven't really dealt with that thing, and I think it's still playing on my mind a bit. Where do people start with processing bad events like that?
If it's a traumatic event, if it's, I think I was raped, I think I was assaulted, I think I was abused, then I always think it's good to start with somebody. Yeah, it's always good to put it on the table. And man, it can be really tough doing it with the person who, like, going to your parent or to your partner who may have done the thing, because they're going to instantly have to defend themselves. And man, that cascade is messy. So that's when you get a trusted friend or a counselor just to say, hey, this happened. Going back to what you said earlier, am I crazy? And someone might say, yeah. A good friend will say, yeah, you're kind of crazy. It's not a big deal. Or just I sat with a counselor recently and she was like, no, that's a big one.
What about,
that's a big deal.
What about something which is not quite, if that's a 9 or a 10,
write it
what
down.
What about stuff that's 5s?
That's write it down and exhale. And there's something, I think there's something transcendent about getting it out of your body and looking at it on a piece of paper.
Like, descriptively, what are you doing? Are you reliving it? Are you allowing yourself to feel the emotions of it?
I think initially I want to know, and I want to be able to write it down and say, my 5th grader has really been pissing me off lately, right? And then you can exhale and say, does a 5th grader have the ability to piss you off? Because if so, you're a really dysregulated adult, right? And you can have that conversation. If it is, I'm feeling like I want to hit my 5th grader, like I'm feeling this need, I just want to punch him through a wall, go talk to somebody because you're going to hurt somebody, right? So some of that is, and then, what's the guy? He did all the great work on journaling. I mean, there is something really profound about 15 to 20 minutes of sitting in it and writing. I haven't seen a lot of success with people doing that by themselves, doing it with somebody else.
So how do you journal with somebody else?
Oh, I do that now with a guy named Luke Lefevre. They give you prompts and then they have you think through it and they have you exhale for a bit and then they have you write 10 minutes freestyle.
So this is like guided journaling? Yeah. It's not like you're not sitting with another person?
No.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, that's cool. And what's that called?
It's just a thing he does, but
he called? Who's he?
His name's Luke Lefevre.
Okay.
He's out of Nashville.
Is this an online course type?
He's out of Nashville, yeah. But he's a guy that he's always pushed journaling and push journaling and push journaling. And I always kind of roll my eyes like I'm a grown man. I don't need a diary, right? And I knew the therapeutic literature about like write down the stuff. That's good. But what I got really sophisticated at was writing down my injustices, writing down my gratitudes, and writing down my things I need to do to fix it. And all of that was neck up.
Correct. At no point
it's all neck
tapping
up.
into emotions.
Yeah.
So there's that's awesome. And is there a name of his course? Do you know?
I don't. I can send it to you.
Cool.
Yeah, but it's excellent.
Yeah. So Rick is really, really good with this as well. Rick Hansen from Hardwiring Happiness. And what he has is the HEAL framework.
Okay.
So have, enrich, absorb, and then optionally link at the end. So have a good experience. So a good opportunity right now might be, fuck, it's the first time I've met John, and like I'm really enjoying this, and I feel competent, and that's really fucking nice. This is my job. This is my life.
Yeah, we're at work right now. Yeah.
Millions of people that get to listen to this, and I really hope it's helping them. And fuck, that's awesome. So have a good experience. You need to notice it, right? So you need a degree of mindfulness. So you need to be able to have the experience and notice it. So then you have enrich, which is sort of I'm allowing it to sort of fill a little bit, and you're sitting with it for as long as possible. 30 seconds to a minute is really good. And then you have absorb. And absorb is imagine the experience sinking down and becoming a part of you. So I think that's a little bit more embodied, right? So you've got, this is nice, and I'm kind of up here, and I'm enrich. I'm sort of feeling it's expanding, and I'm sort of sitting in it. And then absorb, it's like sinking down into me, and that's becoming a part of me. And I think you can do this. I mentioned before, and I did for a very long time, like 10 6-month journals in a row, basically with like minimal breaks in between it for the end of my 20s until a couple of years ago. But a lot of it just ended up being homework. It's like admin.
That's it.
And I'm like, I'm just paying in retrospect, I thought I was doing the thing, and I shouldn't shout at a previous version of me who did the thing he thought he was supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
But I was largely just like filing stuff. Whereas now, and this is half Tony Robbins, half Rick Hansen, and I've dispensed with most of the other stuff from journaling on a morning, and just 3 things that you're grateful for. But as opposed to just writing them down, like take 1 minute for each thing and just really. So I had a call with my best friend, the guy whose best man I was at his wedding. I had a call with him yesterday for like 45 minutes. And I was like, I fucking love Zach. Like he always listens. He's always got awesome advice. He's in a good mood all the time. He's really receptive. He's so fun. Like he really cares. He really cares about me. And it's so nice. And you're like allowing that sense. I think, fuck. That took a minute to do. What was the other one? The fresh air this morning just smelled awesome, like coming through the window in front of my bedroom. It smells so good. Like it's really, really refreshing. What was the other one? I developed bravery and courage to overcome difficult things, and I wouldn't have done that previously. I think about how proud of yourself you are that you've done this stuff. Like 3 really, but one of them was literally the fucking wind. But and I just, I finished that, and I was like, I only had 3 minutes before the gym in any case. And I was like, that was so fucking nice. What a lovely way to start a morning.
Yeah.
And I get the sense that a lot of journaling done badly kind of ends up being a highlighter girl from school who has a very well organized ring binder of what she was doing that day.
Yeah, for me it becomes like a weekly report for a business.
Correct.
What did I do? Yeah. What was my up or down? Yeah, it's a P&L. That's exactly right. A buddy of mine's going to a retreat right now, and his wife reached out and said, hey, would the retreat director, ask for a few of his closest friends to write a letter? And I don't know what he'll get from that letter, but I tell you what, it really was transformative for me. It was so much so that my 14-year-old comes bebopping in, just, in his underwear, and is like, hey, Dad. Like, I said, hey, I want you to read this. I'm going to read this to you out loud. This is a letter I'm writing to my friend. I want him to hear that his dad's got adult male friends like this. And it was cool for him to hear that. And at the end, he was like, cool, Dad. Like, and I just have to hope it's downloading somewhere. But it was like, I had this big spiritual moment, and he's like, all right, Dad, that's cool.
Yeah, kind of like.
He's upside down on that little teeter thing, just hanging there. But man, it lifted my spirits to know, I got a friend that good. I got a friend that good, man. And so maybe that's an important exercise, but it takes you back, right? He's the guy I called when my wife went into labor. I don't know what to do, man. He's the guy who I called when I thought I was going to get let go from a job. He's the guy I called before the very first parent I had to tell their kid died. I called him because I'd heard him do it before. And I was like, I want to make sure I'm doing this right. And he said, you're doing it right. Don't ever call me again. You got this. Right. And that kind of blessing that everyone wants from their dad. Right. And so it was, but it took me back to those moments. Just you're remembering those moments. And man, but that was me writing him a note. Right.
Yeah. I mean, what's it like for him to, but in some ways, being selfless is one of the most selfish things you can do.
Right. Yeah.
Because you get all of the positive sense of that. But yeah, male normative alexithymia, like it's so common now among men to not feel feelings that it's got a fucking name. And yeah,
that's like spray painting your dashboard. Like that doesn't make you tough. On your cool Texas pickup truck, just spray paint it black. I don't need these gauges. What a moron. That's dumb. You're going to run out of gas and get a wreck.
Yeah.
Right. And also, if you drive constantly looking at your dashboard, you're going to crash too. Right. Gosh, man. I don't get, and you're in this world more than me. I don't understand the tribal disassociation from reality. It's just so strange.
Look.
It's bananas.
It's
bananas.
I think that there is a big cohort of people in the world who need David Goggins screaming in their face to go harder. And that may be...
Do they need that, or is it pornography? Because I wonder from that.
Perhaps it's some sort of like...
is it so like insanely sensational that it becomes... You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do understand. I get the sense that most people that listen to shows like this are type A people with a type B problem. They're hard-charging, insecure overachievers that need to learn to chill out.
Gotcha.
And play video games. But there is a really big cohort of type B people with a type A problem who are too lazy, not sufficiently disciplined, they don't have upward mobility, they don't have a sense of agency, they don't feel like they have control over their life. And the problem is that people that have got type A people with type B problems, like, oh my God, sorry, you've just got too much discipline. Like you keep winning the marshmallow test all the time. No one's going to give you sympathy for this.
But they'll see your heart attack from space.
Oh, of course.
Right, yeah.
But it sounds like if you are a David Goggins-y, like hard charging, pick yourself up, you don't need to fucking worry about how you feel, just keep on going guy. That sounds like every underdog movie that you've ever heard, because every underdog movie has a dude down on his luck who needs to sort himself out by getting disciplined, and there's an old Japanese guy who teaches him how to do kung fu, and he gets the girl and everything's great, right? There are no movies about how to log out of Slack at 6 p.m. or learn to spend a day under a tree, right? Because that sounds opulent and bourgeois and privileged and a champagne problem. It's like, dude, just chill out. No one gets told to just work harder. It's like, well, you need instruction to work harder.
Yeah.
You don't need instruction to just chill out, because the assumption is that chill is the set point and work is the aberration. But that's not the case. For a lot of people, that's not the case. A lot of people...
That's a great frame, dude.
Yeah. Type A people, type B problems. Type B people, type A problems.
That's a fantastic frame. I've always thought that the way the internet has taken Gaga's message and spit it out, it makes it look like a running Rocky IV montage.
Correct.
It's just
but it's actually happening at all, like in real time.
Yeah, but it's happening in his life, but everybody likes Rocky. You would not have liked that worked out. It was cold, man. Yeah. Like, no one would have stuck it out, but it looks cool with the music.
Everyone wants to feel like if things go badly for me, I can get myself back to where I wanted to be.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, dude.
As opposed to if everything's going right for me, I need to learn to chill out.
Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, you will see.
A few years ago, I joined just a local, you got to be kidding me, like church league basketball. And my knees were like, no, bro, we had a deal.
Yeah, I'm going to stop.
And it was 2 surgeries worth, man. But like we had a contract. But I was like, no, I can be 19 again. It's like, no, you can't, dude.
Bro, the most common, I used to be a college athlete, and I'm about to give myself like a double fucking tendinopathy. Is basketball. By far. So I played cricket until I was 21. I got my grades reduced to get into the university I got into because I was going to go and play at a high level for them. I'd done everything.
Yeah.
It was my entire life throughout my childhood. And I stopped playing for a decade and a bit. And then COVID came along and I was like, I should play cricket again. And the first game back, I snapped my Achilles. And that was 12 months of rehab and 3.5 months in a boot and a surgery, the first major surgery I've ever had. And I learned a lesson I already knew.
Yeah.
One of my friends like snapped every CL in his knee. All of the CLs went. Tom Segura managed to snap his knee and his arm in the same move playing basketball. It's like, guys, look, if you used to be fit and you're now 40 pounds heavier than you used to be, and you've not conditioned anything, and the only running that you do is to avoid the rain going from the car to the house, don't try basketball because you're going to fuck something up.
But we do it with everything. We do it with drugs. We do it with relationships.
Oh, yeah.
If people who abstain from cocaine.
Oh, I'm going to fucking run this back. Watch me.
I'm gonna start where I ended.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's essentially like I press pause on a video game and the like Sniffer 1000 video game. And then I'm going to immediately re-begin. You're going to the gym, taking a break. Everybody knows.
Or marriage, right? You get out of a divorce and you try to date at the level of the marriage you just left. Like, what are you doing, man?
Yeah, no. It's not going to happen. Dude, you're fucking awesome.
Well,
you're absolutely awesome. And I can't wait to have you back on. And today was so much fun. And where should people go? They want to keep...
Hey, before we kick off, can I ask you a question? You got time?
Yeah, make some time, as long as you want.
I got 2 questions for you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so your ability over the last few years to dig in at what I would seriously call the doctoral level at evolutionary psychology.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about that. Like, I'm just thinking of you as one of my grad students. Like, it's been phenomenal to watch.
Thank you. I don't know, I guess.
And that's not me blowing smoke, because I'll bait and switch here in a second, but I'm going to, tell me about that.
I got interested in it toward the back end of 2020, 21. I really started thinking about mating dynamics.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's so fundamental to how the world works, survival and reproduction. Okay, survival thing has been sorted by medicine. So let's talk about reproduction.
Mm-hmm.
And reproduction is mating dynamics. And I just really fell in love with understanding, I guess, the nuts and bolts of how human attraction works, about how mate values work, about mate guarding, jealousy, male parental investment, all of this stuff. And I kind of got welcomed with open arms by the EP world, which I was very fortunate about. People like Rob Henderson, William Costello, Dr. David Buss, Dr. Robert Plomin, even though he's behavioral genetics, all of that world of unspeakable fucking totally cancelable academics really were very kind to me. And I don't think anyone had fully stepped into the world of EP at the level that this show was at and is at now. I don't think anyone had really opened it up. And I think that it's very interesting. I think that, fundamentally my question is, why are we the way that we are?
Mm-hmm.
That's, I'm trying to understand myself and the world around me. And I think that EP gives us a really wonderful look into it. And then you can look at human behavioral ecology, you can look at evolutionary biology. But I just found it so compelling that I didn't stop. And then I spoke at HBES. I spoke at the Human Behavioral Evolutionary Society in Palm Springs. I was part of a symposium there. I'm about to get my first, whatever it is, citation authorship on a study.
Congratulations, man.
So this is going to be cool. I'm going to do this with Candice Blake and Mac and Murphy I have a theory that people who are in shape will be more threatened by potential Ozempic use than people who are out of shape.
Absolutely. Despite
the fact that people who are out of shape would be having their true selves denied as the fat acceptance movement falls away. Lizzo's in good, moderately all right shape now. I don't know whether you've seen it. She's lost it must be over 100 pounds. So she looks very different. But the reason being that if you are someone who's quote unquote in shape, I'm aware that Ozempic doesn't make you in shape, it just makes you skinny. But if you're someone who's in shape, your fitness signal is being derogated, attacked by this person being able to get an easy route to something that you had to use willpower to do, and you're going to see that as a threat. And I've moved a little bit. I'm still super interested in EP, and if anyone's bringing out a new book, I just had Bill von Hippel on.
Okay.
He's fantastic. I guess evolutionary anthropology technically. So I'm still balls deep in it. Just did a great conversation with who the fuck did Matt Ridley about, it's birds, sex, and Darwin or something, which is all about sexual selection. That was yesterday.
Okay.
I love it. And I'm super interested. I'm now moving a little bit more neuroscience, emotions, feelings. I really adore the neuroscience stuff, but.
So what can you point to something that EP has given you?
Interesting.
In terms of, it's a self-serving question.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you exhale and say, okay, here's what this has given me in my day-to-day life over the last 4 years of just swan diving into this. Because your grasp of it is profound. What is the insight and the knowledge given you?
I think understanding that even the most mindful person in the world, even you at your most peaceful, you have a sense that you are the author of your own desires, of your own needs, of your own wants, of your own actions. But realizing that you are basically a vehicle for your genes, and understanding the myriad of different ways that they pull a bait and switch on you, and just realizing how little you're in the driver's seat has been oddly reassuring in a way, because it makes you feel less alone, because you understand that you're not personally cursed by this thing. Perfect example. Here's one good example. So basically, your pathologies are not some unique idiosyncratic issue that only you deal with. They're endemic and they're a part of being a human. That would be like kind of, I guess.
Or they're not characterological.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So perfect example of this. Dr. David Buss writes a book, and in it, he talks about how there is a part of the male brain which is rewarded with pleasure for looking at things that just look sexual. He talks about how guys will happily look at a pair of rocks that look like boobs, right? And you go, okay, it is inherently rewarding for guys to look at stuff that looks sexual. And he got this letter from a man who said, I just wanted to let you know that your book saved my marriage, because I was looking at other women and I was finding them attractive, even though I wasn't going to go and do anything. And I thought that there was something wrong with my relationship. I thought that there was something that was an indication that my marriage was broken because I found other women attractive. I wasn't going to cheat on my partner, and I love her to death, but I saw other women as attractive. And your book taught me that, you're a guy. You're going to see other women that are attractive as attractive, and you have a system that's inbuilt in you that you do not have control over. And that, okay. So when I don't eat for a while, I get hungry. Sense, but for every behavior, for a lot of things, it just makes me feel like, I'm, the things that I struggle with aren't some personal deficiency. They are just part and parcel of you being you.
That's fantastic. I'll have to think about that. I like that a lot. That's good. One more question, and you can say I don't want to talk about this, and that's fine. I've been wrestling with the weight. And so when I think of, not weight physically, but weight of the jobs we have. And when I go back to like an EP mindset, there's no way, and you're at like X's and X's above where I'm at. There's no way we've got the cognitive or the physical wiring to hold this. Right? And so I'm wondering if things like anxiousness or depressive symptoms or a need, there's just kind of a path. There's a path. I'm watching people like head down spiritual paths. I'm watching folks wrestle with autoimmune disorder. Like I'm wondering how much of this is there's a huckster on every corner saying, here's why you feel this way, here's why you feel this way, here's why you feel this way. I'm wondering if there's not something on the squat bar. There's just so much weight. And I don't have a, it's just a hypothesis I'm wrestling with, that at some point, every physical body has a different program for how do we, like some people shake, some people just throw the bar off, some people try to do it anyway and they blow their knees out. If there's something in Chris's body that's saying this thing's gotten really heavy.
Yeah, that's a good question. Perhaps.
Your discussion, the one podcast I just picked up, you had a really eloquent discussion, and I know you don't like talking about it, but I was really captivated by just wrestling with the weight of somebody going to war with their body, going to war with them, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's been a rough 12 months physically for me. America is a a fantastic country, but it tries to kill everybody that enters it that isn't
Every
used
one of
to
them.
it. Yeah.
But that way it can sell you a cure.
That's precisely.
good.
Yeah, the food, the water, the air, the building materials, everything, the cars, the fucking everything. And perhaps, I mean, you look, someone asked me a question about
and this is self-serving too, because I got my own stuff, not that, but
look, here's a way to look at it. Most people are stuck. Most people that are hard charging are stuck somewhere on the spectrum between guilt and overwhelm. Right? It's like, choose your direction, Western man. Because if you've got that type A energy, you are going to continue to want to do stuff. You're going to want to drive harder, more. I just did the #1 bestseller, but let's look over the shoulder of it as I'm receiving it.
Correct.
To ask what's next.
Right.
And, you know, in some ways, this is very early because I'm still in it, right?
Yeah.
I haven't fixed it. And if you haven't fixed the thing, you can't fully feel sort of appreciation for it, but trying to find some of the silver linings. One of the things it's really done is it's taught me the value of a slower pace of life, taking pleasure in simpler things. Because when your capacity gets restricted, and this is for anybody that's going through health problems, it brings you back to a much more sort of pure sense of yourself. You're not able to use bravado or momentum or distraction in the same way that you would previously. It's like stripped back, right? You really see.
Or a YouTube milestone doesn't matter when you can't breathe, right? Yeah.
See who you are underneath in many ways. And I think it reminds you of the stuff that really, really doesn't matter, because if you can't do all of the things, you have to do a few of the things, and presumably the few things you choose to do are much more important. So my feeling around this is, I do not want to look back on a life or a career of miserable successes. I don't want, and this is where, you know, I love Hormozy. He's a fantastic friend, but he is a 1 in a couple of 100 million constitution. And I don't think that most people are built to work like he is. And that's where, if I had an angel and a demon sat on either shoulder, the angel would be Chris Bumstead and the demon would be Alex Hormozy. And Chris would be saying, you should just chill out and, you know, eat some chicken with your friends. And Alex should be saying, like, don't listen to your feelings, stop being such a pussy. And I'm way more in the C-bum energy than I am in the Hormozy energy at the moment. And I think you can switch between the two.
Sure.
But,
or seasonally, right?
Yeah. Yeah. But I just get the sense that if you want to enjoy, presumably the reason that you want success and you want to work hard is so that you can find some sort of enjoyment at the end of it. And you have to be careful not to sacrifice the thing you want, which is joy and happiness, for the thing that's supposed to get it,
right?
Which is success. Like, you're literally cutting off at the knees the opportunity for you to enjoy things along the way because you're so concerned about getting the thing that gets you what you want.
That's it.
The reason that you wrote the book was to enjoy something. During the process of writing it, you were thinking about whether it was going to be successful. During the promotion of it, you were thinking about whether it was going to be successful. And during the success of it, you were thinking about whether the next one would be successful.
That's it.
You go, at no point have you arrived. It's like running toward a mirage. Every step you take toward the horizon moves one further step away from you. And the only fucking way to like win any game is to stop moving the goalposts. Because if every time you try and fucking kick the ball toward it and it goes about to cross the line and then you like move the goal another 100 yards back, it's like, well, that's not going to work. Yeah. So I'm very much in my, at least trying to embrace my sort of slower, more considered energy, really hard trying to not take the same levels of satisfaction and dopamine from like chaotic busyness. You know, what you should be trying to do is move your life toward an outcome that you want. And you have proxies for that, because like the outcome that I want, like a good life, real amorphous. So you have stuff like, I go to the gym every day and I make sure that I speak to my wife and I have a project that I care about. And all of those are broken down into subcomponents, right? I lift the weights in this sort of a manner and we have these kinds of conversations at this sort of a cadence. And I have to answer Slack and I have to do emails and so on and so forth. But don't mistake the little steps that you're supposed to take to get somewhere for the thing that you're supposed to be doing. And you need to regularly be reassessing, is the thing that I'm doing moving me toward my goal? Because when you start on a journey, a lot of the time you need to be answering every email and checking Slack all the time, and you need to be like chaos, go, 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 like super Adderall mode. And then a little bit later, you think, well, I kind of don't need to do that quite so much. Maybe you're part of a team now in the organization that you're in, or maybe it's your own business and you've got some people that can actually do that on your behalf. You go, your entire reason for doing this was to not have to do things you don't want to do anymore. You are at the stage where you don't have to do things you don't want to do anymore. And you were addicted to still doing them because they gave you such a sense of completion. And you have existential angst if you're not busy every single day.
Yeah.
You look at your calendar as a judge of your self-worth. And if your calendar is stacked, how can you be a piece of shit? I can't be useless. Look how many people need me.
Right.
Look at all of the people that need me. If I wasn't here, what would they do? What would all of these just reaching out to check calls?
That's why Americans won't take vacations right there.
Oh, because they feel like they always need to be on the grind? Is it not because they're all poor and they don't get any maternity leave?
Well, there's definitely that.
Structural issues also.
No, there's not a psychology for what if I'm not needed. It's not restful. There's a pastor in Nashville that says, if busyness is your drug, rest will feel like stress. You can't. You can't. It's like being off coke for a week.
A beautiful equivalent of that is the ancient Greek word for work is translated as not at leisure. So the Greeks saw leisure as the set point and work as an aberration.
Oh, wow. Huh.
Now in the modern world, we see work as the set point and leisure as an aberration. So we've turned it upside down. And just to go back to the how are you dealing with, is it pressure of doing all of the stuff causing stuff to arise in your body? Perhaps. And it's too late to fucking turn it around now. So I'm just doing my best. It's a realization. I said to, who the fuck was I talking to about this? I can't remember who I was talking to. I do know who I was talking to, CEO of one of the companies that I work with. And he's about to have a kid. And he was saying, hey man, my drive's dropping a bit. I was like, you do know your wife's 8 months pregnant? It's like, yeah. And I was like, well, you know the science on this. Testosterone drops in men when they get into a relationship. It drops again when the wife gets pregnant, they're about to give birth. Like, that's your kid. Like, you're ready for this to happen. It's like, yeah. And I was like, can we just for a second imagine that you might have had an aneurysm in 5 years' time and that this has saved you from it? Because we don't know. We don't know what was coming down the pipe. Can we imagine just for a second that this gives you a new, more nurturing approach to being able to run your business, which actually stops some impending catastrophe that would have happened if you'd gone more hard charging? We just don't know where it's going to end up. And for the first time in today's conversation to talk about faith, George Janko refers to periods where people are struggling. And he says, every man knows God when he's at his lowest. And I think about that going back to a more sort of stripped back version of you, sort of remembering, okay, I don't have momentum, I don't have ego, I don't have bravado, I don't have the charisma, I don't have the charm, my stories are less compelling and my aura is less energizing and all the rest of it. All right, what's left?
Yeah.
Like, who am I deep down?
Who am I now? Yeah.
Yeah. What are my values and my virtues when I'm not quite as flamboyant as I usually am?
Yeah. And
do people still like me? And do I still like me? And I think, again, it's still early days, but I think I like me a lot more now than I did before I had to fight a ton of health problems, because it's reminded me that sort of the person that's underneath all of that stuff, when I have to go to bed at 8 p.m. every night and when I'm tired all the time and when my mood's not right and when I need to rely on people more, like, I think that's a good person. So, and I don't think that I would have realized that, or I don't think I would have known that if it hadn't happened.
That's fantastic. Or that Chris is a guy worth taking care of. Chris is a guy worth feeling good. Yeah.
I think I like me.
That's fantastic, man. What a gift. Thanks for sharing that with us, man.
I appreciate it.
It's awesome.
Dude, I can't wait to bring you back on.
Appreciate you, man.
You're fucking great. Where should people go? They want to check out all of the stuff you do.
I've got I co-host the Ramsey Show with Dave Ramsey, talking about money, and then I got my Dr. John Delony show. It's call-in. It's like old Dr. Laura show. Like, people call in mental health and marriage problems, and we get them solved.
It's awesome.
Right.
It's sick. Everyone should go and subscribe. Dude,
you,
until next time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you very much for making it to the end of the Dr. John Delony episode. And you can listen to me and Louise Perry talk about very similar topics in an interesting way just here. Go on.